Okay, guys, let's see here. So we are on 4.3. We're on 4.2, concept 3. A completely randomized experiment is the simplest design that can give good evidence of cause-effect relationships. In some cases, however, we can add elements to this basic design to control for the effects of other variables. For example, placebos, fake treatments, can be given to control for the placebo effect, the phenomenon that occurs when subjects respond to getting any treatment, whether it is real or not. We can use blinding when there is a concern that knowing who receives what treatment might affect the results. So a double-blind experiments ensure that neither the subjects nor the people who interact with the subjects and measure the responses know who receives which treatment. I described that in class as the experimenters and the experimentees. All right, do not know who receives which treatment. All right, so what if there's within the subjects right here, what if there is like a common characteristic that could affect the response? Well, when groups of subjects share a common characteristic that might systematically affect the responses to the treatments, we can use something called blocking to control for the effects of this variable. For example, suppose researchers are conducting an experiment to compare the effectiveness of a new medicine for treating high blood pressure with the most commonly prescribed drug. If they believe that older and younger people may respond differently to such medications, the researchers can separate the subjects into blocks of older and younger people and randomly assign the treatment within each block. So they would be actually, conducting the same experiment twice with, first with the older group and then with the younger group. This randomized block design helps isolate the variation in responses due to age, which makes it easier for researchers to find evidence of a treatment effect. If we are only comparing two treatments, we can sometimes conduct a match pairs design. We talked about that in class. So match pair design we would create blocks of two similar individuals and then randomly assigning each subject to a treatment. Another type of matched pair design involves assigning two treatments to each subject in a random order. So if I was doing that in the class, I would, if I'm doing it this very first way right here of blocks of two similar individuals, if I'm doing it that way, then I would group together the two students with the highest grade, then the next two students with the highest grade, then the next two students with the highest grade. And each of those would be a block. And then I would randomly assign, within each of those blocks, I'd randomly assign the treatment to one student and then, the other student. And then if it was the second way, another type of match pairs, how would I do that? Well, then each student would get both treatments. Okay, and that would be assigned in a random way. In each type of experimental design are subject to ensure control, random assignment, and replication. If these principles are addressed in our design, we can establish good evidence for causal relationships. Make sure you can describe how you would conduct an experiment using each of these designs, as you may be asked to do so on the AP exam. All right, so that's what we're working at now. Okay, refer to the previous check for understanding. Describe an experimental design involving blocking that will help Mr. Tyson's question. Explain why this design is preferable to a completely randomized design. All right, so if you recall right here, we had 150 students. They were 150 statistics students, right? For this teacher of Mr. Tyson. And they were given right here, what we did before is we had one group that was given classical music and another group that was given no classical music during a study session. And then everything else was the same. It was just a study session. Everything else was the same. It was controlled so that other variables were controlled. Maybe like, the time of day, things like that. Everything else was controlled except that one study session had classical music. The other study session had no classical music, right? And we randomly assigned half the class to this group, half the class to the other group. And then we gave them a test, all right? And then we, found the results. So what's the issue right here? We're going to use blocking right here. So how are we going to do that? So remember, one of the confounding variables right here was that students who are more knowledgeable about classical music could possibly be affected right here. They might have a different reaction while they are studying. So what we're going to do is we are going to create two blocks. Okay. So right here, we will create two blocks, and right here, what we're going to do is right here, first block will contain students who are knowledgeable about classical music. And the other block students will contain students who are not knowledgeable about classical music. Now, what we will do is right here, within the first block of knowledgeable classical music students, we will randomly assign half of the students to listen to the classical music while studying in class, and the other half will not listen. So we'll have no classical music. All right, and the same procedure will be performed for the non-knowledgeable group, non-knowledgeable classical music group. And then right here, all students will take the same assessment and the average results will be compared. So you may be asking, so what we're doing, the reason we're doing this right here is we're going to compare within the block, right? So the people more familiar with the classical music right here, we're going to compare right here. Basically what we have is we have the people that like classical and the people that don't like classical. And what we have is this is one block, this is the other block. We randomly assign the treatment right here. We have classical music here, we have no classical here. And then we have right here, again, classical here, and we have no classical here. They're all going to give that same assessment where we're going to compare them within each block. This group that has likes classical music, they might have a different reaction than people that don't like classical music. Well, we just compare the average scores within each block. Okay, that's what we're doing right there. All right, so the average results will be compared. And that's it. Okay, so that is the second part, and that is an example of blocking right there. Have a good day. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood right here that this last part right here, just to make it, if I was not clear right here, sorry about that. All students will take the same assessment. The average results will be compared within each block. Okay, you want to compare right here between the block that of the students who are familiar with classical music and the block where the students are not familiar with classical music. And you compare the results within each block because, again, that's the whole point of blocking. All right, so that was it right there.